Hi, this is Joe again with another review. And for the sake of this video, this is actually a special video for a couple of reasons. Reason number one is that this is my 700th video I'm going to be having on YouTube. So that's a pretty big deal, pretty big accomplishment, having 700 videos on YouTube. And not only that, but on the day of recording this video, it happens to be my birthday. So it's like a double celebration there. Celebrating my 700th video and my birthday on the same day. Anyway, the subject for this video is my review of the latest ESPN 30 for 30 film, which is about one of the most popular, not the most popular, and most influential sports talk television show, radio show mostly, and that's the Mike and the Mad Dog Show. And of course, which was on ESPN for 19 years, from 1989 to about like 2008. So it's a 19-year-old show. And of course, it goes into how WFAN came on the air. It went too quick. The problem that I had with this show was that it was only a 1-hour show, and it was way too quick with everything. And then go into more on the controversies between the two of them, with Mike and the Mad Dog was Chris Russo, actually. That's his actual name. And how they actually were constantly fighting with each other. And how Mike would always had as big of an ego as his mouth is. And he's always like rubbing into Russo all the time, and Russo taking so much crap from Francesa, and that's why he left. After 19 years, he couldn't put up with any more of his crap anymore. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. The Mike and the Mad Dog show started in 1989, and one thing that the ESPN show left out was that it was actually Don Imus's idea to get these two guys together. Because WFAN, like I mentioned in my video for the 30th anniversary of WFAN radio, and I did that some time ago. It came as a 24-hour sports station on 1050 on the AM dial in New York City. And about halfway through 1988, WFAN was actually about to go out of business, actually close down, because they weren't getting the rating. First of all, they weren't getting the ratings as they should, because 1050 WHN, at least in the New York market, is not that strong of a signal. Because in certain areas, or when the sun goes down, so does the signal go down. And they're trying to do, and they got like big national names to be hosting the show, like Jim Lampley and Greg Gumbel, to host shows on WFAN, and it wasn't working, because most of the people who were hosts on WFAN at that time, at least during the day, during the week, were mostly big national names and not local names. They did have some local talent, like Bill Mazer, who worked for Channel 5 here in New York doing the sports. You had Harry Rose, who was doing the Mets pre- and post-game shows at that time. Now he's a Mets radio announcer now. But he was doing the hosted the pre- and post-game Mets Extra show, which actually kickstarted WFAN, actually. But I'm mostly talking about WFAN and how that got started. Well, in 1988, they moved to 660 on the AM dial, and they had to buy Don Imus's contract. Now they have a full-time morning radio show host, and because of that, he brought in revenue to WFAN in terms of how much he charges for the ads. So they brought in more revenue, and they brought in some more local talent to talk about just New York sports only. And that's, of course, and there's a big national story involving sports in the sports world. Naturally, of course, it will discuss it. But naturally, they want more local guys to talk about the local sports scene here in New York. Because all the sports teams we have in New York City, Mets and Yankees, Knicks, Rangers, Islanders. Of course, I'm missing out the football because they're not New York teams. There's only one New York football team, and that's the Buffalo Bills. And in New York City, they don't talk about Buffalo Bills. They talk about the closest teams to New York City, which are the Knicks, which are the Jets and Giants. Even though they've been playing in New Jersey for over 30 years in terms of the Jets, and over 40 years now in terms of the Giants. Anyway, so one more local guys. So they hired Mike Francesa, who was working for CBS with the football coverage and does the college basketball stuff. And then they hired Chris Russo, who was doing a show on WMCA at that time. And mostly the two guys originally were doing separate shows, mostly on the weekends. And Don Imus, who says, hey, these two guys are good. Why don't you put them together on the show? And they did. And in September 1989, it was the first show. And they lasted, like I said earlier, for 19 years. Which was one of the longest duos on WFAN. Of course, they had some stinks and some controversies over the years. And for example, one time when Mike was on vacation during the summer months, they would alternate. Let's say 1 week when Francesa, or 1 or 2 weeks when Francesa was on vacation, Russo would be there or by himself, and vice versa. If Russo's not there during the summer or a week or something, Francesa would be there by himself for a week, so they would alternate during the summer. Well, one time, the first time that Russo was on the show by himself, they have a jingle for the Mike and the Mad Dog show. I'm not going to sing it. Besides that, I forgot the lyrics. Anyway, the song was Mike and the Mad Dog on the Fan. Well, Russo decides, since Mike is not here, take his name out of the jingle. Which he told him, hey, Mike is not here, why don't you take his name out of the jingle? It's stupid to have the jingle Mike and the Mad Dog when Mike's not here. Which, it makes sense. But Francesa, with the big ego that he has, he has an ego bigger than the Empire State Building. So he came back early so he could have the jingle the way it was. That was really the first fight. And there was another fight they had when they were supposed to go to cover the Knicks Pacers. I think it was either the Knicks Pacers or the Knicks Cleveland playoffs basketball series or something. And the flight was canceled. And we couldn't happen to anybody. If you travel enough times by plane, eventually your flight's going to get canceled sooner or later. And the next flight, they found out it was going to be an hour and a half later. I said, okay, fine. Okay, and Francesa would like to sit in first class because he's so damn fat he can't sit in coach, right? And also it's too big to sit in coach, not because he's fat, but because his ego is so big. He doesn't want him to sit with the bums in coach. So they told him, look, we don't have any seats in first class. So he says, fuck you, I'm not going. And Russo went, and he did, and that started a huge fight. They didn't even talk to each other for like about 5 months. Because they were pissed off that Mike, because of his big ego, screwed everything up. And now in the 3 for 3 show, Francesa says, yeah, you're right, I had him in the valley. Of course he had him in the valley. And of course, Francesa was getting married, and his fiancée noticed that Mike, because they were fighting so that Mike didn't even invite Russo to his wedding. So Mike's fiancée invited Russo to the wedding. He said, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it. And she did, and that's when they got, broke the ice and made up. Because during that summer, whatever summer that was, Francesa said and quit. I don't want to work with this guy anymore. And that's one of the problems, which didn't address in the 3 for 3 thing. And every time Russo did something by himself, or so as Francesa says, the ratings are not as high as when Francesa is there. When Francesa is there either by himself or with Russo, the ratings were sky high. But if Russo is there by himself, the ratings drop into the toilet, so to speak. And Francesa kept rubbing that in. I remember him rubbing it into Russo all the time because he hated Russo. and Russo hated him. But on air, they work well together. I mean, it's like a bad marriage all around, but on the air, they were a good marriage. But all the time, they weren't a good marriage at all. And so, Russo, after about 19 years, finally woke up and said, I had enough of this asshole. And because Sirius XM gave Russo such a great deal, gave him full reign, creative, and he's doing very, very well by himself on Sirius XM radio, on Mad Dog Live or Mad Dog Sports or whatever, sports channel, whatever it's called. And Princess is doing himself, and he's still, believe it or not, even though all these years with him by himself, I think 9 years by himself now, his ratings are still high for the show, which is unbelievable. Even though over the years he's gotten so many, Francesa anyway, he's gotten so much stuff wrong. That's pathetic. Pathetic. Because you know that every time, if you listen to a show enough times, if he predicts something that's going to happen, especially in football or in baseball, so this guy's going to be great. You know, it's great for the Mets, great for the Yankees, great for whatever team he's on. Next guy's going to have a lousy year, or the next game he's going to pitch going to get if it's a pitcher, he's going to get his ass kicked by whatever team he's pitching against, or if he's a hitter, he's going to strike out 3 times. It costs his team the victory, the win on the ball game, or commit 2 or 3 errors and letting the winning one scoring or some crazy thing like that. I mean, Francesa is a big hex. But one thing they haven't discussed here on this thing, which is a thing that Phil Mushnick in the New York Post has been writing about this for 16 years. I'm talking about the infamous 9/11 episode of the Mike and the Mad Dog show. Now, on 9/11 itself, because of what happened with the attack on the World Trade Center, Russo couldn't get to the studio to do the show. But Francesa was able to get to the studio, and they had the studios in the Kaufman Studios in Astoria, Queens, and it was easy. Nothing was easy on that day, but Francesa was able to get to the studio, and he did the show. He got there late because of obviously for the traffic and everything was all jammed up. You couldn't go anywhere. Really, I mean, they're closing a lot of the highways and the bridges and the tunnels, and after the attack happened. But what happened was that Francesa, not only on 9/11, but the next day on 9/12/2001, Francesa blamed the Jews for 9/11. And he also made another comment that if Israel goes to war, American Jews will not fight for Israel. Will not fight for the United States, but will fight for Israel. Which is the biggest anti-Semitic comment since Jesse Jackson called New York City Hymietown. Or any of the stuff that Louis Farrakhan ever said over the years. And they said, it's total bullshit. I mean, Francesa said it was total bullshit, never happened. And I said, well, it happened. The thing is, the reason why if you go on YouTube and you can't find that clip, because of the fact that Francesa had told Mark Chernoff, who was the program director for WFEN at the time, Francesa had so much pull on WFAN then and now that he had those tapes erased. So nobody will ever know that Francesa was the one who made that comment. And knowing that, but knowing Phil Mercer about over the years, but Sid Rosenberg, who worked on WFAN for a long time, and remember him actually saying it. I said yes. And he now works on IMUS, and he has his own talk show on WABC Radio in New York City. And he said on IMUS, previewing the 30 for 30 show, he said, yes, Mike did actually say, because I remember hearing it. So I listened to his show then, and yes, he actually did say that he blamed the Jews for called Israel a failed experiment. that because of our and Francesca also said that because of the United States allegiance to Israel, because we recognize the state, and also because we recognize the state of Israel back in 1948, that we are now getting punished for it by these Muslims, fanatical Muslims, and we should not have an allegiance to Israel because we're going to keep getting attacked like this. And look, and Francesca did make those comments because I heard it myself that he made those comments. Even though Francesca denies it, but, you're right, because there's no tapes anymore to back up to dispute him, so he could deny it from now to doomsday. But anybody who heard that show knew that he said it. And I'm one of them. So they did discuss it. They did play another tape from another show for another caller saying exactly what Francesca has been accused of and actually said. There was a caller who said, not me. That's Francesca's defense, and they actually played that. Somehow they played a clip of a caller saying, blaming Israel for 9/11 and saying the American Jews won't fight for the United States, but will fight for Israel. And somebody said, "Oh, come on! It's like if somebody takes Vatican City, that I ain't going to fight for Vatican City because I'm Catholic." That type of thing. But honestly, Francesca did actually say that. I remember him saying it, and he's an anti-Semitic. He's an anti-Semitic Italian piece of shit. I have to say, I have to go there because that's exactly what Francesca is. An anti-Semitic fat piece of shit. Because he said, and I'm glad that in December he's going off the air for good. At least on WFAN anyway, because his contract's up in December, is getting out. I hope he stays out. I do hope he stays out. Get that fat fuck off the radio. He should have been fired then. I mean, everybody complained about Imus with the Neppy had a host comment back in 2007, referring to the Rutgers women's basketball team. But what Francesca said was 10,000 times worse than what Imus said about the Rutgers women's basketball team, and because nobody at the time, because we were going through the morning period of the attack. Almost 3,000 people were killed, including 343 firefighters. So people were going through that, and so people didn't really make that big of a deal about it at the time, and they should have. And Francesca should have been fired right then and there on the spot, but he wasn't. And they did discuss that on the show, and they also on the 30 for 30. But the last thing they talked about was when they broke up. And I mean, it's like I didn't go through a traumatic breakup like that, because they lasted for so long, and they thought, hey, everybody would stay on for like 30 years or whatever. Didn't happen. And there were a couple of times when they got together, a couple of times. But the one thing that was funny, and that Francesca gave it to Russo about, and one of their reunions, was everything in New York was make Francesca Con. And a lot of people who are like diehard fans get dressed up and look like Francesca and impersonating them and stuff like that. And they reunited, like this year they got together and reunited. And so Russo had to leave me, had to break up our act for the Giants to win the World Series. Because all those years when Francesca would tease Russo over the fact, because Russo is a big, for some stupid reason, is a big new San Francisco Giants fan, and the baseball team, the San Francisco Giants. He's a big fan of this, and they never won the World Series from 1954 to 2010. Since they moved out to California, they never won a World Series till 2010. And it's been like almost like 60 years before they won a World Series, which is like one of the longest stretches in franchise history. They were like the third longest, and until they finally won in 2010, and then they won in 2012, and then they won in 2014. So He says, "See, you had to leave me for the Giants to finally win the World Series because we were all waiting for the Giants to win the World Series so that Russo could stick it to Francesa after all those years. But unfortunately, it didn't happen until when Francesa left, and until when Russo left. But all those years, Francesa was ragging on Russo because they won 4 championships over a 5-year span. They won the World Series for 4 years. They actually playing in 4 straight World Series, but they lost the 4th one to Arizona in 2001, and all that stuff. Well, one thing they left over was that they fought to get Mike Piazza into the Mets. The Mets fans were calling up, so maybe the Mets should trade for Piazza. And Fred Wilpon was the owner of the Mets. At that time, the co-owner, Nelson Doubleday, who since passed away, says, "Hey, maybe you should trade for Piazza." And people were calling in to the show said, "Yeah, you should trade Piazza." And Mets fans were calling into the Mets front office and trade for Piazza. And then Nelson Doubleday heard the show and said, "Hey, let's get Piazza." So it was actually Nelson Doubleday who pushed to get Mike Piazza here. And thankfully, Doubleday overruled Fred Wilpon. And Piazza became a Met. Now he's in the Hall of Fame as a New York Met. And thankfully, it worked out. He became the second Hall of Famer to be recognized as a Met after Tom Seaver. And it was a great move. And of course, Mike and the Mad Dog were the ones that actually pushed to get Piazza in here. So that's my. I know I went a little long, almost 22 minutes already for this video. So I want to. That's my review of the ESPN's 0 for 30, 30 for 30 show for Mike and the Mad Dog. And my only complaint about this show is that it was only an hour. I mean, they could have at least stretched it out for another half hour. For all the stupid more concern on the fight and the crap that Francesa did to Russo, kept sticking it to him, but how crappy he is, all that stuff, and that I'm so much better than Russo is, and all the craziness and silliness that went on between the two of them. So I think there was one time when they talked about the movie Daredevil, and Francesa was describing the movie, which is, of course, a comic book character with a blind lawyer who became a vigilante at night. And Russo says, "Is that a true story?" It's serious. He actually said that. And of course, when the movie The Pianist came out, because of Russo's speech impediment, he says pianist. Is that pianist? It was also pretty funny. But so that's my review of the 30 for 30 show of Mike and the Mad Dog. Please click on the video, please rate it, feel free to comment on it, please subscribe to my channel, and please forward this video onto your Facebook pages. And you can check out all my videos on my YouTube channel, WDYC.com. It's OWDY.com. There's a homepage, there's my reviewer, Chris Lee Moore. And before I sign off, I want to thank everybody for the support. I want to have reached 700 videos on YouTube if I haven't had the support of my subscribers and my friends, family, whomever. And I want to thank everybody for it. I also want to thank everybody for the birthday wishes on my Facebook page. And hopefully I'll catch you next time. And hopefully, God willing, we'll do another 700 more. Maybe. Thanks for watching, and catch you next time.